Hello, I'm Svitek, and welcome to my review of The Last Duel. This is a Ridley Scott movie that recently came out, and how people are talking about Dune in terms of go see it on the big screen. I implore you to go see this on the big screen. This is an epic tale that deserves to be seen on the big screen, and especially like Ridley Scott, he's getting up in age and things like that, and just, with the way kind of movies are going, who's to say how many more movies like this he will be able to make? And so for me, it was a rare treat to go see it on the big screen and experience this. So highly, highly recommend it. Now, what this movie is about, it's based on true events that took place in France in specifically the Last Duel takes place 1386. And what this Last Duel is a fight to the death between two people. So there's Jacques Le Gris and Jean, right? And Jean is defending his honor / his wife's honor, Marguerite. And this is because there's an accusation against Jacques Le Gris that he raped Jean's wife, right? And the Last Duel, it was a fight to the death, and it was supposed to settle this dispute, right? Now, the story itself is told through chapters, and there's 3 chapters. Each one is told from the perspective of, one's told through the perspective of Jean, one's told through the perspective of Jacques, and one's told through the perspective of Marguerite. And Jean and Jacques were friends initially that grew, through life circumstances, grew apart and became, essentially enemies. Or at least despised each other, right? And so it's interesting to watch that unfold through different perspectives. Now, the fascinating part of it is you might think, okay, then I'm just going to see essentially the same thing 3 times, just with different dialogue and so forth. And that's not the case. What I was really impressed by was that each chapter, while it treaded some territory that was the same because it had to, large portions of each chapter were things we did not see in the other chapters. And that was very interesting to see, and how they pulled it off. And I thought that was really well done. Now, as far as the actors, right? So Matt Damon plays Jean, Adam Driver plays Jacques Le Gris, and Jodie Comer plays Marguerite. And there's also Ben Affleck who plays Pierre, which I didn't realize was Ben Affleck until midway through the movie. I was like, no, wait, that's Ben Affleck. Holy moly. But the scope of this movie, it really goes for it. There's, and that's why I say, the fact that we get new scenes for the 3 different chapters really is a testament to the scale of this movie, because you would imagine it's far easier to just, shoot in the same location and just film different versions of those scenes. But they didn't do that. I mean, again, they did for certain ones, but the fact that they went to new locations and so forth to film other stuff, and really get as a more fuller version of the story, so that way you can kind of decide on your own what happened, was very interesting. So I appreciate that, and it really captures, what I would imagine that time period to be. And it also opens your eyes to some of the horrors of that time, and yet it also highlights some of the similarities we share today. So a lot of fascinating stuff. Really, really worth watching on the big screen. So if you need a nudge, you have it. Now, I'm going to get into the spoiler stuff. Just want to talk a couple of things If you haven't yet seen the movie, pause, come back after you have seen it. And if you have seen the movie, great, let's chat. So you have been warned. One of the things that obviously really stood out to me was the pushback Marguerite experienced once she made the accusation. And not from the men, but specifically from the women. And especially like the mother, right? And that's what's so hard. Like for me, I understood where Jean's mother was coming from of like, you think you're better. Who are you than any of the peasant women who, that the soldiers go to and have their way with? Like, what makes you better than them? Doesn't mean it's right. I mean, that's the fucked up part. Like, it shouldn't happen to the peasant women, if you will, and it shouldn't happen to her. But because of just the way things were, yeah, it was, just allowed to be, and the idea of what the patriarchy was and how it extends to today, the idea that it wasn't even about the rape itself. It was more about like that essentially she was Jean's property, and therefore property was damaged, violated. It was an eye opener, and of course the idea that that a woman couldn't get pregnant unless she enjoyed the sex. So of course it was her fault, and therefore if she was raped and got pregnant, it means she wasn't raped, that she enjoyed it. That does not have to be true. A woman doesn't have to enjoy sex in order to get pregnant. But yeah, how just kind of where we were at that time in history, and how in a lot of ways we haven't gotten away from that thinking still. That's, to me, kind of what it is. And it was interesting opening up with the first chapter of Jean. I thought for sure he would make himself a little bit more sympathetic, but he really wasn't. He was kind of just like, or I guess not sympathetic, but more of like this hero type. And, really he just kind of made himself out to be a loser, in my opinion. And I found that fascinating. And to the same token of like Jacques Le Gris, he didn't, his version of the truth as portrayed in the film didn't end up being that he didn't do it or whatever. Like, we saw him be this heinous playboy, and see like why it would lead to this. And in a fucked up way, yeah, he just overstepped his bounds, but not by much, really, because certainly the chase that we see earlier in the film, it's all part of the game. And when I say game, I mean, it's interesting because as I was watching it, it certainly was a game to Jacques Le Gris, but as far as the woman that he then got, was it really a game to her, or was she just, as I mentioned, just another one of those peasants that they could just have their way with, and that was that? That is an open-ended thing, and I appreciate that it is open-ended, because it certainly made me think. And yeah, it also speaks to, be wary of the circle of people around you, because Le Gris, along with Pierre, like Pierre was a terrible influence, obviously very corrupt. And yet it's interesting that Jean wasn't as influenced by his wife. And, obviously because he thought of her as the woman, more of his property than anything, than a human being. And yet, when we see her chapter, and the idea that she is very intelligent and capable in these ways, it's like, had he listened to her, his finances and so forth would, he wouldn't, like, it's really because of his male stubbornness that they're kind of in the situation that they're in. It didn't have to be that way. So that was an interesting aspect to it. And certainly the notion that, the last duel happens because it's what he really willed. It's not about her honor, it's really more about him. And she points that out, and I appreciate that. And, he literally puts her life in danger. Now, as it's happening, right, as the final duel is happening, I didn't really know who I wanted to root for. I mean, by default, I was rooting for Jean, Matt Damon's character, simply because I didn't want Marguerite to die. But that didn't make it better. Like, he was still an asshole and just heinous. Whether slightly better than Jacques Le Gris, I don't know. And it was a brutal battle. And I appreciated that it just really took it there. And just the callous nature of the onlookers and the king, cheering it on. Like, he was just so excited to see this. And that's the frightening part, is that, ultimately, it's not that far off from our reality in terms of what's possible and what we've seen, if you kind of really extract it and apply it to a different context. We're not that far off, still, which is the scary part. Excuse me. So, for all those reasons, that's why I appreciated this movie. Now, let me know your thoughts. I'm sure you have many. Well, let's chat, But if you do talk spoilers, just denote it in the comments section so that way, other people who haven't seen it aren't spoiled. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate you, and hope to see you next time.